This is a very quick introduction to the Salmon Run game mode in Splatoon 3, so that you can enjoy videos and live streams even if you've never seen or played Splatoon before. I'll be explaining what you'll see in a typical stream, and a quick rundown of the game world and the game's basic mechanics. By the end, I hope you can see why tons of people love the games. Hello, I'm Laffy, and oh yeah, I think fishing is cool. Splatoon at first glance is a lot to take in, so let's start from the beginning. In a nutshell, Splatoon is a really cute, very fast-paced, competitive multiplayer shooter series that is objectively harder than Overwatch and Call of Duty. But with a lot of clever game design from Nintendo, it has a high skill ceiling and even lower skill floor than other games, so anybody can get into it and have a lot of fun. The series is most famous for its 4v4 battle modes, such as Turf War. But a lesser-known game mode is called Salmon Run, where you play as one of 4 players on a team versus AI-controlled salmon. Salmon Run is all about teamwork, and the objective is to work together through 3 waves, defeat boss Salmonids to make them drop golden eggs, and deliver those eggs to the basket to reach the quota within a time limit. Salmon Run debuted in Splatoon 2, and it makes a return in Splatoon with additional features such as new bosses, maps, and gameplay mechanics such as egg throwing. To tell if a player is playing PvP or PvE, if you see a player wearing fresh clothes, see this on the screen, and complaining about their team, then you're watching a 4 vs 4 battle mode. If you see a player wearing a slop suit, see this on the screen, and complaining about their team, then you're watching Salmon Run. In the game world, you play as either an Inkling or an Octoling that likes memes. You have no choice in the matter. You like memes now. Salmon Run is run by Grisco Industries and is treated as a questionable part-time job that players do for various rewards. Imagine working at Amazon, but better. It's a funny juxtaposition from the otherwise very colorful world. Splatoon lore runs deep. Inside Grisco, players start a shift with either freelance, which means teaming up with random players, or inviting people from their friends list, which people must add each other through their friend codes to do so. After starting a shift, players will go through 3 waves of salmon enemies. Each wave is 100 seconds long. The egg quota required varies depending on your job title and pay grade. Successfully clearing the 3 waves gives you 20 points to your pay grade. If the whole team is flatted, then that's a wrap. If the team does not reach the quota within the time limit, then that's also a fail. Failing at wave 1 makes you lose 20, at wave 2, 10 points, and at wave 3 your pay grade is retained. Aside from the sheer fun of it, delivering eggs past the quota gives you more of these points. Unlike jobs in real life,
Mr. Grace, can I have a raise?
No.
You get promoted for your performance. You start from apprentice and you can get promoted all the way up to executive VP, or EVP for short. Each job title has a pay grade range from 0 to 100. Once you reach 100, you get promoted. Drop below 0 and you get demoted. Once you reach EVP though, the pay grade goes up to 999. The job title and pay grade basically determines the difficulty of your shift by setting how many eggs must be delivered and how quickly bosses spawn to try to overwhelm you. Higher quota means higher difficulty. Each player is provided a different main weapon for each wave. The weapons available, along with the map that everyone plays on, changes every 40 hours. There are nearly 70 weapons in the game, and more on the way. Each weapon has their strengths, weaknesses, and nuances that require a lot of knowledge, skill, and experimentation to master. Some weapons are better at handling certain bosses, for example. Weapons are also balanced differently in Salmon Run compared to PvP. That was a bare minimum quick rundown of Salmon Run. Players play this mode for fun, rewards, and challenge themselves to see how far they can climb in EVP. Splatoon is a very fast-paced game that focuses on movement and area control. Regular walking movement is slow, but players can fire ink from their weapons, which coat the ground and walls. You can then go into swim form to quickly travel through their colored ink, including climbing up walls. Submerging yourself in ink will also refill your ink tank, which is basically your ammo to fire your weapon. This means it's important to paint as much of the ground as you can to increase your chances of success. Players can spend 2/3 of their ink tank to either toss an egg or throw a bomb. You can tell when a player has enough ink to do either of these by this indicator on the ink tank. Side note, you can also see this information on the life preserver on their back. Bombs are necessary for defeating certain bosses and have tons of other utilities, just like in real life. Speaking of real life, there's no health bar in this game. Players have to gauge their health by the ink splatter appearing on the sides of the screen. Health heals over time, and faster when you're submerged in ink. When your health is depleted, you get splatted. The game tells you what finished you off, and you are out of commission for about 5 seconds. Players have to call for help from other teammates to be revived. Teammates have to be revived by shooting them. Also, because Inklings and Octolings evolved to walk on land, they cannot swim. I will not elaborate further. Here's a quick explanation of the things you'll see on screen. These orange things are called power eggs, and are mostly there to let you know you're doing damage to something. At the end of a shift, you can see your team's results screen. It tells you the number of golden eggs you delivered to the basket, power eggs gathered, number of teammates revived, and number of times you were revived. The numbers you see are not always an indication of skill or whether someone carries a team, so take it with a grain of sea salt. On the top left during gameplay, you can see what wave you're on, time remaining, egg quota, and player status. The bottom left is the callouts, which are the main ways to communicate in-game. You can tell your team to notify them of potential threats or to call for help when you get splattered. Booyah is simply a celebration callout to let players know you're having a good time. And it's important to booyah back, or I will find you. You may be wondering why the left and right directions are unused for callouts, but you gotta admit that Nintendo really covered the entire range of necessary social interaction. The top right shows the player's special weapon and how many uses they have left. Before we talk about special weapons, we need to talk about all the types of Salmonids, including the 11 different bosses that players will be facing. They all typically fight with cookware and other household items, so it's not too different from an episode of Hell's Kitchen. There are 3 types of lesser Salmonid, and they follow a basic pattern of walking towards players and attacking them up close. They vary in speed, damage, and health, which you can tell just by their chunkiness. Each of these 3 are dangerous in their own way due to how many can swarm you. All bosses drop 3 eggs when defeated, and if eggs are left alone too long, snatchers will fly over and take them away. They can be splatted to prevent this. For the 11 bosses, think of these as Special Infected from Left 4 Dead, where they each have their special abilities and ways to defeat them. Steelheads are invulnerable to your normal weapons and throw bombs that can one-shot players. Players must shoot the bomb on their head before it is thrown to blow them up. Scrappers beeline towards a nearby player, dealing contact damage. They are invulnerable from shots coming from the front, but shooting them stops them briefly and eventually stuns them, giving players opportunity to get around and shoot them from behind. Steel eels move slowly but cover a large area. They are only vulnerable from their tail. Stingers are highly dangerous bosses that stay by the shore and fire a laser at players from across the map. Players must venture out and take out all their pots and pans. Moths swim under the ground towards players, and after a brief warning, they will destroy you. The best way to handle them is to get out of the way and make them eat a bomb. Drizzlers have an umbrella that protects them. They fire a missile, which, after a brief delay, will rise into the air and create a slowly moving rain cloud. It deals damage over time, and it coats the ground with salmon ink. Players can shoot at them when they're vulnerable after firing a missile or while they're relocating. They can also deflect the missile back at them for a stylish instant kill. Fish sticks plant a pillar and spin in circles high above the ground, quickly spitting salmon ink in a wide area. Players can either shoot at all the little guys from below or climb the pillar to take them out. The pillar will stick around and can be used to the player's advantage. Flipper floppers plant a circle of salmon ink on the ground. After a brief delay, they dive in and instantly murder any players in the circle. Best way to handle them is to ink the circle to cause it to smash into your friendly ink, leaving it wide open. Big shots are another highly dangerous boss that stay by the shore with a cannon. They walk back and forth in the water to fire cannonballs towards the basket. These cannonballs cause waves of damage that players must jump to avoid. Having more than one of these alive at once is usually GG. Players can use these cannons to launch eggs back to the basket as well. Salmonids float high above the ground, creating a force field while spawning lesser Salmonids. Players can shoot at them as is, or go into the force field to trigger its slam, splatting anything underneath it, including other bosses. This feels so good to do, by the way, and it also allows players an opportunity to ride them up and shoot them pretty easily. Flyfish stay by the shore and fire missiles targeting all players. They're pretty simple to defeat. All you have to do is throw bombs into the bin. The flyfish are the community's choice for the objectively worst boss in the game, so expect a lot of discussion about them. The fact that they're so difficult compared to other bosses makes them an anomaly. Life would be better without them. At the start of each shift, players are given 2 uses of a special weapon that they are urged to conserve throughout all 3 waves. These special weapons are extremely useful, but limited, and they help out in a pinch. Every player in the shift will randomly be given a special, and no other player will have the same one. There are 7 specials that you can have, each with their own situational uses and advantages. Let's go over them real quick since I think they are integral to the game, and you'll understand why many people get upset when players are too conservative about using them. The Crab Tank grants armor and strong rapid-fire shots to shred through enemies and fire bombs from a distance. The Killer Whale summons 3 pairs of lasers that can delete bosses from afar. This, along with some other specials, can defeat bosses that are typically invulnerable from your basic weapons. The Reef Slider gives invincibility while traveling in a straight line before causing a large explosion. This one is hard to use effectively. The Wave Breaker creates waves of damage that cover a large area, similar to Big Shots, but it's for your team. It's one of the more useful specials in the game for many reasons, such as being able to revive teammates and clearing up the area around the basket for egg deliveries. The Booyah Bomb has the player rise up into the air and must be charged with friendship, kind of like a Dragon Ball Z Spirit Bomb. Once thrown, it creates a large explosion. Triple Ink Strike lets you throw 3 beacons. After colliding with something, the markers trigger a tornado of damaging ink. It's like you're calling upon the power of Squid Jesus to smite your foes. And the Inkjet lets players hover and fire powerful missiles. Simple but good. Aside from the many permutations of bosses that could spawn, the waves have many different variations as well, such as 3 kinds of water levels that determine how much area players have to work with, which you can see at the beginning of each wave. There are also special nighttime waves called known occurrences that have a difficulty range from easy and free minigame waves to the hardest wave in the game, Glowfly Rush, requiring split-second adaptation and the team working together and being on the same page. I won't go over all of the nighttime waves here because I think they're a fun surprise. Keep an eye out for them. There is one more wave I should mention though. Doing a shift increases players' individual smell-o-meter that you can see in the lobby. The higher it is, the higher chance of players encountering an extra 4th wave, where they face off against the King Salmonid.
Are you familiar with Big Chunks?
Players are given 1 use of their special regardless of whether they use them or not, and egg throwing gets replaced with the egg cannon, which you use to deal damage to the king or other bosses. This wave usually becomes a mad scramble and a chaotic mess to deal enough damage to the king before time runs out, while also dealing with bosses that continue spawning in every direction. Whether you win or lose this wave, the team will receive their 20 points for clearing the first 3 waves, but depending on how well they do against the King Salmonid, they will receive randomized rewards. The rewards have worse odds than in Monster Hunter, but they add up eventually. They can spend these rewards at the shop for various cosmetics and items. Here's some miscellaneous info that I wasn't sure where to put in the video, but it's still worth knowing. Every so often, the game will have a Wildcard weapons rotation, where all players are given random weapons each wave, with a chance to receive a Grisco weapon. These Grisco weapons are fun because they are overtuned and modified versions of other weapon classes that have much more powerful stats. Some have special properties to them that can defeat bosses that are typically invulnerable. These weapons cannot be used anywhere else, so it's a special occasion to be able to use them. Salmon Run can be quite intense at high levels, with bosses spawning rapidly in every direction while the team scrambles to keep things under control. The job titles and pay grade I mentioned earlier determines your hazard level, which is basically your difficulty parameter. The highest hazard level being 333%. If you reach this far, you'll see a very intimidating at the start of a shift. The higher your hazard level, the more bosses that spawn, and the more eggs that must be delivered to reach the quota. This can lead to tons of clutch moments, like making a 3-point shot in basketball when the timer is running out. I don't know anything about basketball, I hope that's correct. There's also plenty of silly moments too. Players are awarded with badges for playing the game, which are basically little JPEGs you can slap onto your banner to show off your achievements to strangers on the internet. Reaching Executive VP 200, 400, 600, and 999 awards players with a badge of the respective stage they achieved it on. Reaching 999 is a very impressive achievement as players only have 40 hours in the rotation to reach there before the maps and weapons change again. And then your pay grade resets back to 40. As I said before, you get 20 points maximum each time you win, and the higher the pay grade, the more difficult it gets. To some very good players, it's a matter of time to get there. To others like me trying to get better, reaching 999 is a huge milestone that tests their skill, persistence, and knowledge of the game. Salmon Run can be quite chaotic at a glance, especially with the cacophony of sounds you'll hear. The game mode generally has very good sound cues, so having the sound on is very helpful. You may not find many players listening to other music while playing, but why would you when Salmon Run has the best music in the game? Anyways, because there's a lot going on, if you want to interact with a Salmon Run streamer, they'll usually have time to check the chat between waves, when they get splatted, or waiting in the lobby to start another shift. The game has a shop that refreshes every day so you can buy clothes to customize your cephalopod. These clothes have cool abilities that buff your player, such as faster swim speed. But guess what? These don't matter. Salmon runners are slop suit enjoyers and you cannot bring any of those passive buffs. Every player has the same basic stats. Also, unlike other game modes, there's no map. Players will have to use their own eyes and ears to spot distant threats, make split-second decisions, and adapt accordingly. The Salmon Run game mode has felt unacknowledged by Nintendo throughout Splatoon 2. But with Splatoon, the developers devised an entire event around Salmon Run called Big Run, which is supposed to happen every 2 months or so. During Big Run, salmon invade a map that is normally used in PvP. Not only was this a fresh new experience for everybody, I think it went a long way to encouraging more people to play Salmon Run. The Salmon Run community is huge and you shouldn't have issues finding someone to play with anytime soon. Here's a quick rundown of some vocab you might hear during streams. A rotation is the map and set of weapons players are given during the 40-hour period. After 40 hours, the maps and weapons rotate to a different map and different set of weapons. Squid roll is a movement technique where players quickly change directions by jumping and twirling out of the ink. It's pretty much like a parry, because every game has a parry nowadays. It reduces damage coming at you for a split second, such as the steelhead bomb that was more than close enough to splat me. You hear a satisfying sound when it's pulled off. Wait, that's not right. There we go. At high level play, you may see players mention crippling. The most dangerous boss in the game is the flyfish, which has 2 bins that launch missiles. Crippling is when players strategically destroy one of the bins and leave it alive, weakening its destructive power and preventing more from spawning. But if you ask me, they all deserve to die. Mini bosses can be lured closer to the basket to deliver eggs faster. This is a very important thing to do when you are climbing EVP, because reaching the quotas starts to become a race against time. Splatting mini bosses on the shore, away from the basket, usually results in not reaching the egg quota in time. Overfishing is basically the term for when a team of players use advanced strategies to go for high scores for egg deliveries. The appeal of Salmon Run is that no 2 waves play the same, since weapons and maps rotate periodically, bosses have tons of permutations that they can spawn in and group up against you, the amount of ways things can go wrong, and how players deal with the chaos. It's about solving problems while more problems keep happening. Splatoon in general taps into a similar thing that Power Wash Simulator does, but in reverse, creating order from chaos, or chaos from order, however you want to frame it. Salmon Run is a really fun game mode to get good at and watch. I hope you give it a try sometime. There are many weapons, bosses, and maps to learn. The game mode has tons of depth to keep players wanting to learn and get better at it. It may feel overwhelming at first if you've never seen it before, but my suggestion is to take your time and focus on what you find most interesting. Thanks for watching. I hope I explained things well enough. And I hope this video will make watching Salmon Run streams a lot more enjoyable, and I hope to see you in one of my streams where I try to get better, challenge myself, or just have an all-around fun time fishing.